and AmericanEagle.com, another example of the best businesses in the world, turning to the best in the business for websites. Go to AmericanEagle.com or call 877-WEB-NOW1. That's 877-WEB-NOW1.
For breaking Padres news and reaction as soon as it happens.
Breaking news out of baseball where the Padres are finalizing a blockbuster trade.
Follow San Diego's #1 sports station on X at 97.3 The Fan ST. KWFN and KWFN HD1 San Diego.
This is Xander Bogaerts. The Padres play here on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
And the Padres in front.
Always live on the free Odyssey app. It's that time, Prior Faithful. Time to discuss everything going on with the Padres. We've gathered the entire 97.3 The Fan crew together to bring you the most in-depth discussion on the Friars in our weekly Padres Roundtable, presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. Alongside Stephen Woods, Annie and Elston, and Gwen and Chris, here's your host, Ben Higgins.
And welcome once again to a brand new setting. We are live from our Odyssey Studios soundstage. It is our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. I feel like I am moderating some sort of a presidential debate. We have all the candidates lined up. It's the primary season here. At the end, hopefully you'll know who you're voting for. But actually, along next to me, I've got my co-host, Stephen Woods.
Good morning.
We have Tony Gwynn Jr., who is
everyone.
enjoying his Roundtable Pizza early this morning. Craig Elston.
Somebody enjoyed it. That's good.
We've got Annie Heilbrunn.
Hello, Ben.
And we have Chris Ello, a good full house.
Cheers.
Good morning to everyone. Let's just start with the week that was for the San Diego Padres. I know they're coming off the most recent game, a tough 1-0 loss to the Milwaukee Brewers, but you can't really say that this was anything but the best week of the season so far for the San Diego Padres.
Oh, no.
There goes my Roundtable Pizza going down a little bit.
That's why I don't eat it before. This is literally why I don't eat it right before the show.
Smart, Craig. Well, I was hungry after the end of our show.
Trying to promote the advertiser.
Absolutely.
Very good. In
Delicious.
the best light possible.
I appreciate the animal training they're doing with us. Here's the pizza. It's right in front of you.
It's right in front of you.
You can't eat it. It's going to be there. It's like when you set the meal down for the dog, but you make him get in position.
Chris, what did we see from the San Diego Padres this last week against the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Milwaukee Brewers? The biggest takeaway for you from the past 6 games?
Obviously, the ability to get behind and come from behind and win ball games. I think that's something that stays with the team throughout the course of a season. I think they've rallied from 3 runs down to win 4 games, if I'm not mistaken, already this year. They've had come from behind wins in half their wins. So I think that's a good start. I saw a stat yesterday on the telecast that they lead Major League Baseball in productive outs, however it is you want to measure those. I don't know how analytic that is, but it tells me that they're doing a lot of good things, and they're doing a lot of things that Tony's been telling me they've been working on, since Peoria, which is, getting into the batter's box with an idea of what you want to do to try and help this team win a ball game and find a way to, put things together. I mean, I know on paper coming into this season, a lot of people thought with the loss of, Juan Soto mostly, but no way this lineup is going to be anywhere near as good as it was last year. But collectively, this team is showing me that it's better than the sum of its parts. And I think that's a great sign.
And Annie, how significant is it to go on the road against 2 teams that have been perennial playoff teams the last few years and expect to be there at the end of the season again, the Dodgers and the Brewers? By the way, 2 places where the Padres have historically played really poorly in recent years, and to take series victories in both stadiums.
I think it's very significant. I think you look at this road trip and you think good things. 4-2 is a good record to come home with after a road trip where you went through a hostile environment, where you took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers, where you could have kind of folded after that Dodgers series. We see it a lot of times with kind of a hangover after you play the Dodgers a little bit. But despite the tough travel and getting in at 5 a.m. on Monday to Milwaukee, they went out there, they got 2 wins. I know yesterday was frustrating. You never want to leave a player on third twice and not be able to bring him home. At the same time, part of me thinks like they kind of ran out of gas a little bit. Sometimes that travel can catch up to you day 2 or day 3. And I think overall, they had a good road trip.
Craig, are we beyond statements for the San Diego Padres, or were they statements made this week by the team?
It's funny.
I thought Chris did a good job talking about, we all agree, the big comeback wins are critical. The game that stood out to me the very most from this road trip was Tuesday, because Tuesday is what I would like to call a common dub. They took the lead early. They took advantage of mistakes by the other team, put the runs on the board that were given to them along the way, held that lead, tacked onto it a little bit, and it was a mostly low-stress afternoon and evening for the San Diego Padres. It's great to come back from 8-0 down. It's great to come back from 7-3 down at Dodger Stadium. And if that's your formula to win for the season, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
You can't do that all the time. Those are the games you pull out of the fire. You need common dubs in order to stack wins as a franchise, and I want to see a lot more of what we saw on Tuesday.
Common wisdom, Tony, is that, win your games at home, win your series at home, kind of split on the road. You're going to have a good year. But how important is it from a former player's perspective to go on the road, especially early in the season, to like come together and show off a good road trip like the Padres had?
I think it depends on, your circumstances at the moment, how the storyline has developed prior. Obviously, the Padres they've been getting their butts whooped in Los Angeles for quite some time. And so I think at some point as a player, I'm certainly of the thought that, you try to win every game, this, that, and the other. But when you've gone into a building, especially a building that you're familiar with and you've gotten your butt kicked a few times, there's a part of you that's like, all right, enough is enough. And that's kind of what it felt like in that series against the Dodgers. And then they took care of business against Milwaukee. I would say that not a whole lot has changed outside of the bullpen being consistent. I thought the Padres, even prior to those two road series, were doing a lot of good things offensively. I really do. I thought outside of the one bad inning for Darvish, the one bad inning for Musgrove, starting pitching has been pretty good. I think it just all kind of came together on this road trip. So for the Padres, it's just about continuing to lay the foundation, continuing to establish that identity, which is starting to become, we just are going to play 9 innings. We're going to play 9 innings of baseball. Whatever the score is, but we're going to play the game right.
We've seen in the past, Woods, where the Dodger series have been so important, at least to the fans at least, and who knows inside the organization. But even when they've done well, there was a sweep a couple of years ago, and then it feels like, okay, then there's a hangover that comes after that, and they're not able to follow it up. Seeing them then go to Milwaukee after having to take on the Dodgers for 3 games and not slipping and, just letting those games get away, I thought was important as well.
Yeah, I mean, I loved that. I loved so much that series in Los Angeles. And, of course, Friday night's game was epic. I mean, it was just so much fun to watch and be a part of. And like Tony said, flipping the script a little bit, and they were shell-shocked. They were. I mean, and if you're on Twitter, like as much as I was during that series, you see their fans relax. They've done this to the Padres so many times, up 4 runs. There's no way we're giving this game away. And I will be 100% honest with you. I was not feeling good about the Milwaukee series because of that high that they got. And to go in and get those first 2, I thought was just massive. Yeah, I wanted that one yesterday, certainly. And I know those guys did too. And you do feel like that one slipped through their fingers a little bit because but again, you can't complain about 4-2 on a road trip. You can never complain about that.
Welcome into our 97.3 The Padres Roundtable, presented by Roundtable Pizza. For the first time this year, though, the Padres are having to deal with a significant injury, and hopefully it's not a long-term injury to you, Darvish, but at the very least, the Padres are going to need to find a way to fill the next 2 or 3 spots in turns through his starting rotation. So, Craig, I'll start with you. They called up the much heralded Logan Gillespie to fill U's spot on the roster for now, but I don't think he's the solution.
They named an airport after this guy in El Cajon. Come on.
They did. Gillespie Field, right?
Gillespie Field. Yeah.
We spent so much time this spring talking about the impact he was going to have on the San Diego Padres this year. I don't remember him at all. What do you think the Padres need to do, starting with U's first turn through the rotation? Is it bullpen days? Is it one of the minor league prospects coming up? What is your solution for the next couple of weeks with Yu Darvish on the IL?
Well, I'm scratching bullpen day off the list because this team goes to Colorado for a 4-game series right after. So if you pull your bullpen stamina down to 0 before you start a series in Colorado, you're just asking yourself for big-time trouble. I would absolutely call someone up to start on Saturday. Looking around, in Double-A, Ryan Bergert would be on turn on Saturday. He's off to a great start. They would have to add him to the 40-man, but the whole thought process behind this offseason was to have young arms that are building behind the roster that you have, that have the opportunity to come up and spot start and not be kind of a disaster class, call-up guy. And I feel like Bogaerts would be a good choice. Vasquez is supposed to start Friday in El Paso, so they could call him up and give him an extra day's rest and let him go on Saturday. One of those two guys, I think, would be a good call.
Tony, we see a lot of teams go with bullpen days. It's not uncommon, even from when you played. There's many more bullpen games than there used to be. The Padres have this deep bullpen. Do you feel like, Craig, that they need to bring a starter up, or are you okay going with the guys that they have in there right now?
Yeah, no, they'll probably have to bring a starter up, and I highly doubt it'll be somebody who's not on the 40-man, because that means you now have to designate somebody, and the Padres like the guys that they have, and I'm pretty sure they don't want to lose anybody, so that does make a guy like Vasquez a good, chance. There's a good chance that it could be a guy like that. I don't think this team is built, honestly, to have bullpen days, even with the depth that they have, right? There's a skill that, you need certain players to have, whether it's an opener, he has to be able to come in and have the kind of stuff that can fill that spot. And then, or you got to have the right circumstances. You mentioned Colorado, 4-game set. It just doesn't make a ton of sense to do a bullpen day when you know that you can't predict anything that happens when you go to Coors Field. So, I think it'll be one of the guys that they already have on the roster. I don't know who that'll be, but listen, this is what good teams do. When somebody goes down, somebody's got to step up, and it goes the same with Crony being down for however long he's down. Somebody just got to step up. That's what good teams do.
Annie, I think it's interesting. The Milwaukee Brewers went with a bullpen day essentially against the Padres, eschewing one of their best pitchers in Freddie Peralta, who was on regular rest, who could have gone. They thought it was so important, though, getting that extra rest for their pitchers early in the season that, they weren't saying, hey, we're willing to lose this game just for it. In fact, they didn't. It worked out well for them going with the bullpen day, and they get the extra rest for their starter as well. We've seen the Padres do that in past seasons under Bob Melvin and even Jay Stingler before that, the 6-man rotation, the extra rest. Not seeing it as much this year. Do you think that's a function of the lack of depth, and where are they heading here with you, Darvish, on the injured list?
I do. I think that's not the type of team that they have this year. That's not the type of rotation that they have. And I was just checking my phone to make sure, but they're going into a stint now where they've got 13 games in 13 days. And the Padres, to this point, have only had 7 in a row. Give them credit for the travel to Korea and coming back and everything that they've had to overcome so far. But this is going to be a no breaks here. So I think that's going to have to be something that's taken into consideration with whatever moves they make as well.
Chris, your thoughts on Yu's replacement here in the bullpen?
What everybody else said. I just think that they need to find a different designation than sore neck for you, Darvish. It sounds to me like he could stand under a warm shower and go out and pitch. I know that that's not true. I'm sure he's much more injured than they're saying he is, because I know you, Darvish, is a tough dude. I just wish there's some other designation we could give him. Like Tony said, somebody's going to have to step up, whoever it is. If it's Vasquez, this is the guy they brought in, part of this trade with the Yankees. I wouldn't mind seeing what he has early in the season.
Chris brings up the unsaid things that I was probably thinking as well, Woods. You didn't pitch poorly against the Dodgers. They won that game. He said he was dealing with the sore neck in his last outing. Yeah. And yet, 2 weeks, this is going to impact the Padres early in the season, no doubt about it.
Yeah, 13 games in 13 days, and, you count those Colorado games as extra. It's more like 17 games in 13 days. Now, I know Ben was reading off the stat. He's not worried. I'm worried. I've watched this team in Colorado. We all have the last few years. They're not good, which makes it even – I'm more nervous about these games than I am about the Dodger series, because you lose those, you're like, you spent $1 billion. You're supposed to whip our ass all over the field. But those Colorado games, weird things happen. You don't want this thing to spiral out of control with an injury. If you call up a pitcher to come in and throw on Saturday, what if he makes it an inning in the third? You're doing a bullpen. It's just there's so much that can go wrong in the course of a baseball season. I'm going to continue to preach treading water. Treading, and the stepping up is great. Matthew Batten stepped up yesterday. I really wanted that to be his day with the defensive play he made, the triple, and just wasn't in the cards. But weird stuff happens in Colorado, and you never have enough arms, I feel like, to get through those series.
Now, don't blame me. I was listening to Chris talk about how bad the Rockies were and how a 4-game winning streak is on the way. So
have they not proven how bad they are?
They have, but how many times have they seemed like they were a bad team?
True.
And the Padres go into Coors Field.
You guys have the worst PTSD I've ever
100%. That's
in
it.
my life.
That's it.
Oh
It's
my
true.
God.
It's true.
We were talking about on our show how fans will sit all day after a loss like the 1-0 loss to the Brewers, and we will stew and steam. And when we talked to Jesse earlier this week, he said, maybe like twice in my life have I even noticed on like the plane flight
that guys were sad.
The guys are sad or happy after a win. The players, Tony, they flush it so much faster than we do as fans.
You have to, as a player, you have to. You will get eaten alive and buried.
Did it eat you alive ever when you were a young player and you took an 0 for 4, 3 Ks or something?
And that's why I sucked for a long time, because it would carry over into the next day.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I started learning that I give myself an hour at most to stew on it before I started realizing, man, this is actually, when I would wake up and start to feel like, man, I'm still thinking about the previous day, I knew it could be a long day at that point.
Yeah.
So you have to flush it. Now, fans are different. They don't have to flush anything.
No, we're not pros. That's what I said today. We're not professionals.
They get to keep on it. But in terms of those guys on the play, Jesse's right. Like, whether they have swept, been swept, took in 2 out of 3, or lost 2 out of 3, you generally get the same. Now, you get to the end of the season, maybe in like a tough 3-game series that you need it, you might see some ramifications of that on a flight. But most of the time, these guys are really good at turning the page and getting ready for the next one.
Pete Fairbanks gives it 16 minutes.
16 minutes he gave it today. It was some of the
that.
best audio I've ever heard in my whole life.
That was great.
That is
every show today.
That is emblematic of how most guys did. Like, he was clearly distraught
Oh, he was
as he was
pissed.
doing it.
Yeah.
But he looked at that clock. He was like, I got 16 more minutes to be like this. I would like to stay in this for a little bit.
And if you stew on it, it starts to disrupt your next day.
Yeah,
and your next
100%.
day. So it just makes
100%.
it worse.
Still worried about the pop-up I had last Wednesday night in softball. Can't.
It's mortifying, right? Yeah, you got a whole week to think
We'll
about
never
it.
be pros. It's our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. And I got a text from our boss, Adam. Just want to make sure you're going to bring up Xander Bogaerts during. Yes, Adam. I am going to bring up
Is he not going to run in here today to
Xander
make sure
Bogaerts and his struggles and his slow start and the fact that he's still batting leadoff every single day in Mike Schilt's lineup. Woods, I'll start next to you here. We talked about it a little bit on our show. Does Mike Schilt need to make some sort of change, do something when it comes to Xander Bogaerts, getting him going, moving him down in the order, giving him more days off? He got the 1 day off. Is there anything else to be done about the slow start for Xander Bogaerts?
Yeah, I think you can absolutely move him in the lineup. And, it's the guy at the top of the order that's going to get the most ABs, and that's what you want right now. And Xander, scuffling is fine. I mean, I think, everybody's going to scuffle. And I think Acuna just hit his first bomb yesterday, maybe. I mean,
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Guys are getting off to slow starts. I don't know how he's hitting average-wise. I mean, we did Shohei's stats today. He's 1 for 19 with runners in scoring position. Shohei Ohtani, but he's also batting .340 with an OPS of over 1,000. But, he's not hitting with runners in scoring position. And Xander being the guy that's going to get the most ABs, I'm absolutely fine moving him down in the order, giving him a break, taking some pressure off him, and putting the guy that wants to hit leadoff more than anybody on the team, Fernando Tatis Jr., in the leadoff spot. I know other people have other opinions on that. You're talking about a guy
He
that
said that? He
Yeah,
said
yeah.
he wants to hit more leadoff than anybody else?
Yeah, I got a text today with an article. I think it was before the season started. He wants to hit leadoff. So, I mean, we were talking to Adam Jones today on our show, and Adam Jones was like, man, I'll do it. I'll hit leadoff if you want, But to have a guy that wants to go out there and hit leadoff, I think Mookie Betts is that guy too. He doesn't mind hitting leadoff at all, and it's really paying dividends.
But he also said, Manny, when he was a young player, they asked him, and he goes, I don't want to hit.
I don't want to.
I don't want to do that.
It's not for everyone, and they're asking a lot of Xander already with the position change. And I know Xander told us at spring training last year, 2 years ago. I like hitting second. I don't really get my numbers there. So numbers aside, the only number we need to worry about is how many wins we have at the end of the year. I'm putting the kid that wants to hit leadoff there, and that's Fernando Tatis Jr.
I know the question that fans really think about is how worried should we be about Xander Bogaerts and the fact that he's got nearly a decade in San Diego, more than a decade in San Diego coming up, And it's not really a fair question, is it, Annie? To even in the second season, to say you have to live up to $285 million in every single at-bat is never going to be fair. But it's also really impossible that he's ever going to live totally up to that contract, likely based on his age, based on his previous performance and comps. He's kind of in a no-win situation almost.
Yeah, holding his contract against him and berating him for it, I think, is the wrong approach to take here. And I look at Xander Bogaerts, and I'm going to steal your thunder right now as I listened to the Gwynn and Chris show yesterday, and Chris was talking about, go look at this guy's numbers. Go look at his numbers. Year in and year out for a veteran like Xander Bogaerts, they are good. His average, his on-base percentage, yes, sometimes his power might not be there from year to year or whatever as much as his OPS or whatnot, but his average, his on-base percentage tends to revert to above average numbers each year. And I look at that and I go, so why are we sitting here looking at Xander Bogaerts and saying, 2-3 weeks in, this guy is no good, this guy's never going to have it, this guy's old? Like, no, he's shown time and time again, year and year again, that he knows how to hit. And he's a good baseball player. And so I think you got to let him find it. It's not that easy to find. If
you have to. I mean, you don't have a choice at the end of the day. You don't. And if you could go back and redo contracts that you've done in the past or undo trades that you've made, yeah, of course you're going to do that. Every GM would have. He has his list in his mind that when he's driving to the office every day, he goes, why did I do that? Like, what didn't I see or what did I see? And I don't know that they would have done that deal, given a chance to redo it. But, he's here. He's here for a while. You're really not getting out of it. I can't concern myself with 10 years down the road when I'm almost 60 years old. I want him to get that knock yesterday. I want him to get that fly ball in that situation that he was in, certainly. And I think that's a fair ask. But other than that, the only way for him to get out of it is to hit his way out of it. That's it. That's the only way.
Craig, Xander's not playing at Fenway Park anymore. The pulled line drives that were high off the wall for doubles are now outs a lot of the time, playing at Petco Park and in San Francisco and at Dodger Stadium. What does a successful season now look like for Xander Bogaerts going forward?
Well, I mean, that's a very interesting question. I think it's a year that so Pods Above Replacement, one of our Padres Hot Tub podcasts, did when they signed Xander Bogaerts, did a straight statistical breakdown. Obviously, I don't have my computer in front of me, but the long and short of it was supposed to cost Xander some doubles and actually add a few homers because some of those balls would go out over the low fence that would have been doubles off of the Green Monster.
The homer he hit this year would not have been a home run at Fenway Park. Wasn't high enough.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So I'm over that comp. I mean, I think he is a 120 WRC plus kind of player.
Break that down for the people who are listening right now who might not understand that.
Absolutely. So
I'm BAPIP challenged.
So WRC plus, which breaks down to weighted runs created plus. This is a simple stat based on a grade of 100, right? So 100 is an average player in Major League Baseball, and that is similar to WAR, but it's purely for offense in terms of how many runs are you creating for your lineup compared to the average Major League Baseball player. So if you are a 120, that means you're 20% better than the average Major League Baseball player.
Just nothing.
Well, just for example, during his current hot streak, Manny Machado, WRC plus 193, right? So he's almost twice as good as an average player during this hot streak. So that's what I expect from Xander Bogaerts. I expect for him to be a consistent hitter for this team, somebody who's getting big hits for the team. The issue right now for Xander is that, we can take everything we want about his contract, whatever.
Sure.
All of that, throw it down the river. Like, you can't do anything.
Can't do a thing about it.
About that. Right now, today, he's making the poorest quality of contact of any of the players in the lineup.
He's not chasing a bunch. Like, he's not chasing he's not swinging and missing a lot. I don't think. If I looked at his sliders,
No, but his exit velocity is
nil.
basically the lowest of his career. We'll talk more about it on our show a little bit later. But like, it's literally the lowest, one of the lowest of his career right now. So, I mean, 2 roundtables ago and last roundtable, I said I'd like to see Kim go to the leadoff spot and Bogaerts go to 5. And that's what I'd like to resubmit to the audience. I'd like to see Kim lead off.
All right, so Ha-Sung Kim in the leadoff spot you talked about, and I tend to agree with you. The pitches seen, sees a ton of pitches, and that's a traditional metric you look for out of a leadoff hitter. He also has energy, stolen base, speed. There's a lot of things that make sense. He's right-handed. Adam Jones suggested Jurickson Profar in the leadoff spot.
I love that.
Annie likes that idea.
Or Fernando. I just think that they're chaotic. They make the pitcher get out of whack a little bit.
With Jurickson, great. He also sees a lot of pitches, gets on base via the walk. I said the fact that the Padres are a little light on left-handed hitters, he's able to break up the lineup when you put him down a little bit, and he's been so successful so far that I would say you probably have to pick among your right-handers. Chris, when Mike Shildt fills out his lineup this weekend against the Toronto Blue Jays, who would you like to see in the leadoff spot?
Xander Bogaerts.
Still.
Yeah, I don't understand why there's any concern. I really don't. Last week, and all these statistics, I'm not overlooking everything everyone said. They're all very, well thought out. But last week, we talked about on our show, why is everybody concerned about Manny Machado? And I read off his career numbers, and every single year is 30 home runs, 100 RBIs. He'll do it again this year if you just relax and let him play baseball. And I want to thank Manny, because on cue, he had a couple of quick home runs, and he had a big week, and nobody's concerned about Manny right now. I'll say the same thing about Xander Bogaerts. I will take a 2020 guy who hit 285 as my second baseman, and that's what he was last year. And I don't see any reason why he won't be that again this year. Mike Shildt wants him in leadoff spot. It's way too early, in my mind, to scrap that plan. Whatever it is that Mike Shildt saw and whatever it is that had him put Xander there, I'm fine with it. This offense is scoring as well as it has in years. I'm in no hurry to make a change.
I know there are some fans who will say, well, that's not enough for a guy making as much money as Xander Bogaerts is making. But again, if you're mad about the contract, I'd say be mad at A.J. Preller, not at Xander Bogaerts. Tony,
what are you mad about? It's not your money.
I
what
know,
are you mad about?
I know.
I want to know your thoughts on this.
But, okay, you played with some guys who had some bigger contracts. Maybe not what they're making nowadays, but bigger contracts. Did you ever see a guy put more pressure on himself because of the money that they were making? Is that a real thing that happens to baseball players?
It literally happens every year. Okay. No matter who signs. We saw it with Manny here the first year. I think we've seen it with every big signing that we've had here in the first year.
And trade,
right? And then all of a
sudden,
even
Jake before his money kicked in.
100%. Like we've seen guys, because they, contrary to what people may believe, these dudes actually really care about their jobs, how they look doing their jobs.
Yeah.
Like that's all mightily important. So yeah, I have seen guys press. I think in terms of Bogey, I mean, I pretty much heard these exact same things. I mean, all the way up until like June of last year with Xander, and then you look at the back of his baseball card, pretty much lines up. He was dropped off a little bit in RBIs, but he was hitting in a spot in the lineup where, quite frankly, no one was driving in RBIs. So I like Xander. I think we have to kind of pull back and look how the lineup functions as a whole with Xander at the top. You start moving Ha-Sung to the top. How does the lineup function? Are you still getting the same production 1 through 9? Is everybody slotted in spaces that they can be most productive? Xander may not be productive right now, but him being in that spot allows Fernando to do what he's doing. It allows Manny to kind of sit back into that 4 spot, and without Jake now, it looks a little bit different. But Prof has slid up into that 3 spot. He's looked pretty good, and so I just think the function of the lineup is working in a way right now, and I think everybody's seen it, where everybody's in a spot where they can be at their best, and that includes Jackson Merrill, who is swinging like gangbusters. A lot of it's because he's sandwiched in a spot where they got to come to him, and he's getting good pitches to hit. That changes when you start moving guys around.
It's holistic.
We saw Pat Murphy.
Like that.
We did see Pat Murphy aggressively go to left-handers against Jackson Merrill in this series, and it worked for Pat Murphy. Now, the point was made. A lot of left-handers will see the guy coming into the bullpen in Major League Baseball. It's not just Jackson Merrill. Craig, in terms of Jackson's development, as you've seen it just over this week, do you think that's going to be an issue for him? Is he going to be one of those heavy split guys on the platoons, or do you feel like he's going to kind of even it out and is going to be a guy who hits both sides of the plate, both arms pretty well?
This is his first month in Major League Baseball. So right now, teams are just starting to get a compilation of data points on Jackson Merrill. They're just starting to get those clips that everyone has in the iPad, right, that they can pull up and take a look. So as Merrill gets up to a peak earlier this week where he hit 356 and we're in Joe DiMaggio territory, of course, every opposing team is starting to break down okay, we need to take him seriously. We need to start to impose platoon taxes on him, and I think that is natural. But to be honest with you, Ben, there's going to be another set of adjustments come May as well, which is just them breaking down this is a pitch he has a little bit of an issue with. They're going to identify things that Jackson's doing, and they're going to attack those things specifically because this is the big leagues, and as Tony knows, it's the hardest place to hit in the entire world.
Yeah. As they did with Fernando Tatis Jr. when he first came up, it's that is something that every team is doing. All right, we're at the midway point of our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable, presented by Roundtable Pizza, and I want to get into a subject that got a little spicy on our show after Michael King took his no-hitter into the sixth inning yesterday. The subject today for the little halftime segment is no-hitter jinxes. Oh my Lord. Tony, you were in the broadcast booth.
All right, well, this is going to
Probably
be your
Bob
fault.
Scanlon.
Was it your fault yesterday?
You've been in the booth, and
Yes.
you've been in the dugout.
Yes.
Different, right?
Whole lot different. Here's what I'll say is, as a color analyst, I will defer to the play-by-play and how he wants to handle it. To me, if it's left up to me, you guys are going to know once we get past the fifth inning.
Okay.
But ultimately, it's up to him. He's the one that's kind of orchestrating the whole broadcast. So I left it up to Scans in this standpoint. And after the game, he said, usually I would have just told him because I feel like that's part of my job. But he's also a human being, and he also knows that some folks out there
He's
on
going to
Twitter
get dragged.
will try to drag him for doing it. And I'm sure that played a part in him wanting to go the direction in which he went. Personally, I think it's quite silly from our standpoint because our job is to kind of tell you what's going on.
But you can dance around it
Why?
because it's
What are we dancing for?
'Cause it's
we
fun.
are not playing. We are not throwing a baseball. We are not in the dugout. We are not even. I could understand if the guys in the dugout were listening to the game and could hear us say
can
something.
you imagine if
Would you
they
hate
piped
that
it
or
into
what?
the
That would be
dugout every
different.
game?
But outside of that,
A lot of reasons.
outside of that, you guys are here to know what's on with the game. My job is to tell you the no-hitter is a pretty big part of what was going on at that
Chris,
point.
you've called a lot of games, San Diego State baseball all the time. How did you handle no hit?
On the radio, you have
on
to
the radio.
tell somebody it's a no-hitter. I don't see how you cannot do that. I mean, if you're watching, on the telecast today, as soon as it got to the sixth inning, it said he has a no-hitter
No-hitter.
going.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the TV broadcaster doesn't need to say anything. But Tony's right. This is ridiculous. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, honestly, because it's one thing. I'm sorry, but it's one thing if in the dugout you're staying away from the guy, not saying anything,
Right.
but to be broadcasting to people that are listening but not playing the game, how does this have any effect on Michael King whatsoever?
So I agree with you, but the reason I bring it up, and Annie, you've covered baseball players for a long time, they are a superstitious bunch in general. There's some who aren't, but honestly, most of them are kind of
90%.
superstitious. And I was talking with a colleague of mine at Channel 10 who called minor league games for the Lancaster Jethawks for years, Jeff Lasky. And they rarely had a chance at no-hitters in that ballpark. High desert, usually 15-14 by the third inning in those games. But had one game where a guy's had one 6th, 7th inning, and he's on the radio, and he's like, I need to tell people about it. We've never had one in history. We've got something. It's brewing here. There's no hits. And he said it many times They can't hear him in the dugout, but they got word of it. And he said there were several players who were very angry at him that he actually brought it up on the radio. On the radio, Annie. During the game, that they were mad about it because they were so superstitious.
That's why these guys are minor leaguers.
Sorry.
I was gonna be much nicer.
We are in the
but
big
I was
leagues.
thinking that same
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, if I was down there sidelining, I would not be leaning over and going, "Hey, Michael, almost there. Good job. Keep going with that no-hitter.
Just need
6
9 more outs,
Maybe.
baby.
You guys better make those plays behind him, But I wouldn't do that anyways, right? So, like for any guy in any performance. So if I was, but being in the booth, being TV, radio, I think you talk about it. I don't think you shy away from it. Scan did tweet afterwards that was the last time he would ever do a broadcast like that.
caved to the pressure.
I could honestly, when we got to the point, what was it? Was it 7th inning? Is when
Yeah,
he gave
took
it
it
up?
into the 7th. Yeah,
I could feel him like questioning whether he should do or not. And in my mind, I'm like,
Poor guy.
Twitter,
What are we
you-
doing?
It's all Twitter's fault.
And I don't think I have enough power. Like, I'm not sitting here like, I have power over this, and I'm gonna.
You don't want to
I'm
be
gonna
the
ruin
person
it.
that says it, though. That's all I'm saying.
Can you say, Reese Hoskins is coming up and he's hitless today? And
Yeah,
boy,
that-
by the way,
it
so is
seems-
everybody in the Brewer
else.
lineup.
There you go.
Is that a way you can get around
it's
it?
Just
Yes.
the term.
It's the term no-hitter.
He has a
Right.
no-hitter.
Yeah, that's it. It's not hard to dance around that. Like, be creative. Like, Scan was creative.
It's not the
Have some-
job.
I understand.
I feel like it's less professional.
It is less professional. That is
Listen to Tony, you
that
guys.
is the
He
whole
is-
point.
he is
I
on point
I
this
take
time.
issue with it because
It's fun, though.
It is. I get it's
baseball.
fun for
I
the
get that.
fans, right?
It's not the congressional hearing
but
on arms.
It's
that
also
Bob's
up on the
made.
scoreboard
by the
for
way-
everyone in the stadium
By
to
the way,
see.
half of the people who were probably more than half of the people were watching on TV, so they knew it anyway, and it said no hitter.
No-hitter.
Like, come on.
Yeah, I think we gotta get
You
rid
know,
of that
listen
bug.
though. I mean, to me, this is like speaking as a play-by-play broadcaster. This is a matter of language. And by the way, I probably believe more in broadcaster spells than everybody on this stage. Like, I feel like I've cast a few in my lifetime.
course you do.
However, this is very simple. It's a matter of language. A no-hitter is a complete event. A no-hitter is something you do. You throw a no-hitter. While you're throwing a no-hitter, you have thrown 5 hitless innings, 6 hitless innings, 7 hitless innings, and you can go through and narrate that all the way through. Michael King is not allowed to hit through 5 innings. That's a factual statement.
Sure.
It's not Michael King is throwing a no-hitter because he hasn't done it yet. He's throwing 5 hitless innings. I'll tell you, in hockey, they don't like it when you say that the goaltender is pitching a shutout. There's 5 minutes left. Oh, he's got a shutout going. He's 24.
I didn't know that.
No, and they, I got not like somebody, the goalkeeper, you said the thing, but like, somebody in the front office, like, hey, you're not, you really shouldn't say that. But here's another one. People say this all the time in broadcasting. Oh, that's 28 unanswered points for the Vikings. Unanswered is at the end of the game. Until there's an answer, it's 28 straight points.
Yeah.
So it's little things,
language.
Little language things
Superstition.
fix all of this.
Superstition in sports is one of my.
Tony, it's side-eye,
It's
Tony.
it's one of my favorite things about sports.
Hey,
though,
man, I'm just protecting
is
your
this-
no-hitter, man.
It's a superstition.
Tony, did you step over the line when you ran
Yeah,
out onto
Tony.
the field? Or
I
did you-
dragged my feet on it just to spite
it.
everybody.
No way.
No, I jumped over the line.
Yeah, he jumped over the line. The C, I do PA. This was not play-by-play.
It was like habit, though. I don't know if I was like, oh, if I scratch this line, everybody else is doing it.
It's like when you're on the sidewalk
That's
and you
what
don't step on the crack.
superstitions are.
You know?
Everybody else is doing it, so I better do it
So
too.
I do PA for the Seals. We won a game when I wore a certain outfit, and so I wore it again. We won. I wore it again. We won. I wore it again. We lost. So I had to switch
Ran
it
out
up
of
completely.
juice. That's all.
You're like the guy with the underwear.
Without
thank
without
you.
superstition,
National
I think
championship
sports
guy.
would be so much more boring.
How many hits were in your bat, right? Then you're
Right.
like, oh, well, this bat's out of
You
hits.
want to know something funny about my bats? I switched the bat every at bat, pretty much.
Did you really?
Yes.
Even if you got a knot, you barreled one.
Which in itself is kind of superstitious, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
like switching it up no matter what happens.
That's mind
I'm gonna
blowing.
switch my
Especially it
golf
also doesn't
clubs
let you
every
depend
every
on
shot.
that.
This is probably why I despise this whole idea of
Yeah.
not calling it a no hitter when that's what's happening.
Your lack of superstition is a superstition now. I'm sorry.
That's
Putting
really
the
true.
excuse on that.
I've
Oh,
gotten
it was the bat.
I've gotten a disgruntled
Like
look.
it takes away the excuse. Like, oh, it was the bat.
It was the bat, yeah.
It was the,
It's my dad always used to say, It's the person controlling it, not the
bat,
not the actual bats.
I've gotten disgruntled
Potter
looks
says
from
the
the
same thing.
basketball coaches before, because again, basketball, you're right there on the floor broadcasting the game, and if I mention that somebody has made 25 straight free throws.
The announcer
They're invariably going to miss the next one.
You know what's funny is
and that's silly, but I've gotten the look like
idiots.
Would you say
The
that?
broadcaster's magic spell.
no one
you
ever
know?
looks up to the booth when it's the opposite, though.
I know.
right? When
I
you
know.
say such and such has thrown 6 scoreless innings, and then our guy gets a hit. No one's like, "Hey,
Great
nice job up there."
jinxed
Nobody does it.
Yeah, but
It
Tony,
only works
but
for the
I know.
negative.
But I know.
Yeah.
When I cast the spell and it works, I know.
I think
And then I'm
that's
like,
part
You
of the
think you have
problem.
so much more power over this than we do. We have this kind of power. We do not.
How do you know for sure?
I feel like I've lost control of the debate. You
can't answer
Hey,
that.
this is how important this subject is. We
All
spent
for
more
her
time on this question
Than
than
Xander Bogaerts.
in any of the baseball questions.
Well, the number of people who watch a Major League Baseball game, which is tens of thousands,
Yes.
someone is always saying it somewhere, and someone's going to say it right before the first hit. And with Michael King, it just happened to be my wife, Shelley, who was kind of not paying attention on the couch, looked up and goes, "Ooh, a no-hitter, that's cool." And then 3 seconds later, the ball jumps into the outfield. She goes, "Did I just do that?" And
Yes, you
I
did,
don't
Shelley.
believe in
Yes.
superstitions,
honey,
but
you
yes,
did it.
yes, of course, that was your fault.
Apologize to the team.
It was your fault sitting on a couch in San Diego that someone in Milwaukee just got a hit.
Why are you screaming?
Butterfly flaps its wings. They're that. Okay, never mind.
Yes, the butterfly flaps its wings. Yes.
All right, it's our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. I want to revisit some of the things we thought at the beginning of the season about the NL West, now that we are just 3+ weeks into the season. I think one expectation we all had is that the Dodgers were going to run away with the division. Do we all still have that expectation based on what we've seen the first 3 weeks of the season, where the Dodgers clearly, Chris, have had some weaknesses in their bullpen, in their starting rotation depth, and in the bottom of their lineup so far, and are only a game ahead of the Padres at recording time of our roundtable?
Yes, I'm glad to see them struggling, and I have no issues with that. Yeah, it's going to be close at least through May or June. I mean, let's see what happens when everybody gets healthy for the Dodgers. Also gets healthy for the Diamondbacks and for the Giants. I mean, there's a lot of really good players that aren't playing right now. Walker Buehler, Kershaw for Arizona. Rodriguez just went on the 60. Robbie Ray for San Francisco. Alex Cobb. There's some really good pick now. Darvish for the Padres. So, let's see what happens when everybody gets healthy. But I never thought the Dodgers were going to run away and win the thing by 25 or 30 games. I think that's ridiculous thinking. I think these teams are all, pretty good in this division, at least 4 of them. And I think all 4 of them are going to have a say in, what happens at least through the All-Star break. And it might separate a little bit in the second half, but, whoever gets healthy is going to have a big advantage.
Annie, are the Dodgers a little more vulnerable than we may have all thought?
I think that we learned last year that just having a team full of superstars doesn't necessarily mean that you're just going to go out and win everything. However, I look at the Dodgers and I say they've obviously got a good working foundation and system of how they do things. And I know people will get mad about that, but they just, they've won. They have continued to win. They've been at the top of this division. They've shown that even without a good starting rotation or good pitching, they still found a way to win 100+ games. They still found a way to get out of certain jams. So until they don't do it, I don't take that away from them. Until they fail, I don't take away their successes.
But, Craig, as you know, even the greatest teams fall into disrepair at some point. We certainly don't think the Dodgers are on the precipice of that decline, but look at the Golden State Warriors. The Yankees have gone a long time without a championship. You can put all the money you want into a product. You can make a lot of right decisions. Every franchise is going to have a down season somewhere. The Dodgers have almost been lucky in that they have avoided, at least in the regular season, that slippage that most teams have. I mean, the Cardinals are a well-run organization. Even they in the last year have hit some hard times. Could it be coming for the Dodgers at all?
No, they're going to win the NL West. I mean,
Thank you for being honest.
The Dodgers average 4 to 5 runs every single game.
Yep.
And yeah, okay, sure, they got shut out yesterday, right? So but that's baseball. Baseball's stupid. Something stupid happens every single day. I just wanted to make sure, so I looked this up. Walker Buehler, Tony Gonsolin, Clayton Kershaw, Dustin May, Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan. Those
All
are
pitchers.
Those are 6 starting pitchers that are on the DL, the injured list, pardon me, for the LA Dodgers right now. They're all coming back. Buehler is in rehab right now.
Yeah.
Kershaw's coming back later. So it's like, well, could you imagine if the Dodgers traded for 4 aces and a number 3 at the deadline? Well, that's kind of the feeling, and it's the same thing that the Giants are counting on, as Chris mentioned, of Robbie Ray comes back, Cobb comes back, and all of a sudden their rotation gets a lot deeper. The Dodgers have the most depth. They've got the most top-end talent. They score the most runs. They're going to win it. It's a long season.
I don't think I've ever induced as many eye rolls from Tony Gwynn Jr. as we have in this.
You have produced one with almost every question.
That's exactly. I feel like I have.
Welcome
today.
to 20 hours a week with Ben Higgins, everybody. You should watch the YouTube feed from me just shutting down.
I've seen it.
Flying out of the room.
I've seen it.
You clearly agreed with Craig, and he makes really good points.
Yeah.
Now, I think if we were Padres fans sitting here and you had 4 pitchers that were coming back from the injured list, we'd all be going, they might not be the same pitchers when they come back. It might take them a while to figure things out.
On this side.
Why don't we do that with the Dodgers? Of course, when the Dodgers pitchers come back, they're all going to be Cy Young caliber all-star guys.
They
like
fixed James
were.
Paxton. They fixed
have a track
everybody.
record.
You're like,
what was my man who won the Cy? Was it Anderson? The other Tyler Anderson.
Almost, yeah.
I mean,
they pick guys off the street. They're like,
that is
I
why
can get 3 WAR out of him.
Right. And
Right.
that is
All of a
why
sudden
we
he's an all-star.
all feel that way. It's not because we want to feel that way. It's because
It's happened.
it's happened too many times. Dudes who were regular big leaguers turn into Cy Young Award winners. You got a guy like Chris Taylor was a journeyman. I mean, they have too many stories like that.
Yeah,
for
Muncy, Turner.
Right,
my
we can
God.
go on
Fine.
and on.
Who's the genius then? Because they hire a team does well, and you know this, Tony, in professional sports. Then other teams go and hire people away that were doing good things, and you got to find someone else. Someone has to be the genius that keeps it going, though, year after year after year.
It's not obviously. You have to have people who have the eyes who can recognize. Okay, this guy has something. Maybe we can. The Dodgers, at least in my experience, they have really good teachers. Like
Development.
They develop really, really well, and because of that, guys come in with more of an open mind to try different things, and that's not the case everywhere you go.
And they're allowed to try different things. Like that. That's the thing. I was reading
Absolutely.
that book. The one they talk about Justin Turner and how he completely just he was nothing. He was on his way out of baseball. And
See, now I don't know if in Justin's case I think that had more to do with him trying. He was open to doing it.
He was open to doing it, but they also said, yeah. Like this is what I want to work on, and they said, sure, do it, and turned into Justin Turner.
To your question about the Dodgers, though, I think they should win the division, but we have seen things like this happen where a team like the Pods, who start building this kind of role and confidence, and if the Dodgers can't separate themselves early enough, this could be a division that actually ends up being up for grabs. I don't know that the Dodgers are guaranteed to get 100 wins like they have however many the last few years, but that's all going to be dependent on a lot of those guys who have been hurt. What does Walker Buehler come back and look like? What does Kersh come back and look like? I mean, they got plenty of talent, but, will health ultimately allow them to get to where they're trying to go?
For the record, I don't disagree with either you, Tony, or with Craig. And the Dodgers probably will still go on and win the division. But what about the Diamondbacks? What about the Giants, the teams that you're also competing against for wild card spots? They're also off to slow starts. Chris mentioned some of their injured players, which is true, but they're clearly not as deep or as talented as this Dodgers team would. Does it make a difference to you that neither of those teams seem to be off to good starts this year?
Not much. Again, it's 21 games in, but I did think watching the Dodgers scuffle a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I'm a generational hater. I think it's a blast. I know it's not going to last. So life is about little moments that make you happy, right? You get a cookie. Oh, I like these cookies. These are delicious. And then it's fleeting, and then it's gone.
Speaking my language,
right?
I love cookies.
And so, your kid makes a great catch in the field. Like, remember that moment. So I remember, like yesterday, I was like, nice. They also got shut out. And then you move on, and whatever they lack, they're going to go get. That's the other thing is, like, they're so pot committed that if 6 guys fell down the stairs and broke their leg, they'll just go out and replace it. And they got the talent to do it. They got the money to do it. They got the TV contract to do it. They'll do anything. They are so committed to winning a World Series. And they will do whatever it takes to get there.
They've also been fortunate, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you signed a guy like Ohtani, as we've seen here in recent weeks, guys aren't necessarily willing to defer their money. Like, I know the two guys that signed the biggest deals this year were willing to do that. I don't know if people understand how big of a help that's going to end up being for the Dodgers as they try to
Continue
go out
to add
and replenish.
Because you can go like Steve Cohen did last year and go, oh, fine, I'll pay $150
Right. How many
million.
of those guys
That
were?
can't last
How many of
forever.
those guys were deferring money?
Right.
None of
None
them.
of them.
Right. So it's
huge.
Not only are they extremely good at what they do and evaluate, they also been, they got lucky.
They've gotten lucky a bunch.
Gotten lucky
Yeah.
in these terms to be able to keep this run going. Eventually, the luck part's going to run out, and what happens at that point?
Then they're going to go bankrupt, and Ohtani's never going to get his money.
Okay.
I do like
He's
what the
really
Padres,
holding out hope. for
Yes,
that.
I've been hoping for that to happen.
I like what the Padres are doing, though. They're like, okay,
100%.
no one's paying attention to us. That's great.
love
we
it.
want to be in that position.
Yes.
And so all the attention is on these other teams.
Well, the Diamondbacks in particular, they saw, hey, we made the World Series, and then they invested based on that, similar to how the Padres did from 2022, making the NLCS into 2023. And they're finding, at least early on, Craig, that just investing into your team doesn't necessarily immediately achieve results on the field.
Well, especially when the things you invested in don't pitch for
On the
you.
field,
Eduardo Rodriguez hasn't pitched for them, and Jordan Montgomery hasn't pitched for them. So, they've literally contributed nothing, 0 innings, to the team, and those are the single 2 biggest investments that the team has made. The Diamondbacks are going to be better than they are right now.
100%.
They are a very deep and versatile lineup, and they've got some young guys that are stepping forward.
That's a great point, and I'm glad you said that because, again, you said it, 21 games. They look very similar to this last year at the same point. I remember
Probably worse last year.
They came into this ball yard, and on the last day, I remember them hitting, I think it was Carroll, Thomas, and McCarthy, like 5, 6, 7, and it turned into a track meet. And then they left here, and they just took off from that point on. And so I caution everybody, although the division may not look like we thought it was right now, I think when it's all said and done, those same 4 teams that we're talking about, because we've seen the Giants twice now, and it's a pretty competitive battle between us and them. I expect them to be there as well. As Blake Snell, when he gets comfortable, it's going to, it might take some time. We've seen that. When he gets comfortable, it's not fun to face that guy.
Yeah, Webb and Snell
Right.
and Harrison.
That's not going to be fun.
Yeah, that's not fun at all.
Last couple minutes of our 97.3 The Fan Padres Roundtable presented by San Diego Roundtable Pizza. Let's look ahead to the weekend. The Toronto Blue Jays, a team don't see very often, come to town. Chris, a lot of superstars on that team. Like the Padres, they were supposed to be the team on the rise a couple of years ago. Like, ooh, we're going to see the Blue Jays in the World Series probably a couple of times. Hasn't really happened for them, but an interesting series given them the names that are coming in. And I was surprised. I was looking, their pitching's been pretty good as well. They're hovering around 500, I think a game above like the Padres going into the series. Your thoughts on the weekend coming up at Petco Park?
Well, I think it's, big deal that the Blue Jays are coming in, and I'm saying that as a lead into the fact that we talked about it on our show the other day, that I'm not a fan of this whole schedule the way it is.
Points, man.
Did I steal another one of your points? I'm sorry about that. I mean,
You
the
gotta
Blue
live
Jays are
together,
coming in,
too.
so what? I mean, we have to play all these teams. So I would rather be playing the Giants or the Diamondbacks this weekend. To be honest with you, it'll be fun to see Bo Bichette, I guess, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I can't name another Blue Jay. I mean, off the top of my head, as a normal baseball fan, Dalton Varsho, I believe, has had off to a good start.
Former
But
Diamondback.
He's good,
anyway, fun weekend. Let's just win 2 out of 3. That's it.
Annie, Blue Jays coming to town.
I'm going
Any
to let it
thoughts?
get down the
Just-
road here. I agree. I think it'll be fun to see Bo Bichette, to see some of these guys. I think the Padres need to focus on what they need to do and not too much on the team across from them in terms of just looking at this 13-game stretch and how they're going to best get through it.
I think Chris tried to turn this into an indictment on interleague play.
Yes, I did.
Everything. I don't know that we have time for that in the last couple of minutes.
That's
but
why I
Greg,
thought I would do it. Nobody'd be able to argue back against me.
You got any thoughts here coming up?
You're going to see some tough right-handed pitchers here. You're going to see Rodriguez. You're going to see Barrios, who is off to a very good start, and Bassett, who just had a great start his
Also
last
nasty.
time out.
We beat him in Game 3 of the playoff
There
a
you
couple
go.
years ago.
There
with
you go.
Mets.
On the other side, they're a
Can
very
handle him.
right-handed heavy team. I do watch the Blue Jays, I guess, a little bit more, but they're a very right-handed team, and so that's something I'm keeping my eye on, and also especially How does Matt Waldron go here in this first outing on Friday? I think that really sets a tone. If he can get through the 5th, get into the 6th inning, it sets things up better for Saturday's spot start.
That's a great point. Yeah, Blue Jays are coming to town. It's fun to see Vlad Jr., somebody that San Diegans don't get to see a ton of. Outside of that, I'm with Annie. Lock in on what you've been doing as a team. I also don't like, it's not the interleague play. I love interleague play. I don't like the balanced schedule. I playing a team that has nothing to do with your division when we get to the end just seems like it's a waste of everybody's time. I get it. Get the fans, get to see some people that they don't normally see, but it was way better when we had the non-weighted schedule where we could control your destiny a little bit more in the division.
You have to at least be glad that it's you don't have to go to Toronto. Very long international
definitely,
trip.
after going to Korea already,
he went last year to Toronto, right?
Definitely crossed my mind.
And, all the sons of former players, you have a unique perspective. I don't think any team in the history of professional sports have had more sons of former players than the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah,
Cavendish, absolutely. That's got to be a weird thing to follow in those footsteps.
I experienced it a little bit in Milwaukee myself and Prince, and then in L.A. it was D. Gord, myself, and De Jesus. So I've been on teams with multiple former players, son. It's a cool.
Can I get Tony
cool
going
thing.
one more time before the end of the show?
You got about 90 seconds.
How about our second 3-game homestand of the year before going right back out on the road?
Right back on the road.
I actually am not complaining about that.
That's not a biggie?
The first real deal one was going from L.A. to Milwaukee. That was really bad. But outside of that, our schedule is, the 3-game trips aren't great, but they've been right on the West
You don't have
Coast,
any
so.
of those really long, 10-gamers
That's
this year,
good.
which is
I'll
good,
hear
right?
you.
Yeah.
Keep me away from the 10-gamers as long as possible. Right.
Woods, last words. You wore the polo, so you get to have the last word.
I don't
Is this 2 weeks in a row you wore the polo?
Say something.
I told him
say
I'd do it for
something
every
smart and insightful to carry us for about 30 seconds.
every round table. I told him I would wear the polo. I'm doing it as a bit, not because I'm a good company man. No, I'm excited about it. I like watching I like the Blue Jays. I love Laddie Jr. Bo Woods, big fan of Bo Bichette. Huge fan of Bo Bichette. And they remind me of us. They do.
that.
They just remind me of us. And it's like we want that. We want them to kind of ascend. Not this weekend, though.
We're out of time. That was a lot of fun today.
That was fun.
Next week, I'm actually on vacation. Surprise, surprise. I will hand this chair over to Annie Halbert.
Nice.
Moderator.
Now we're talking.
Very
No pressure.
interesting.
You'll do great.
You looked
Yeah.
at
The
all
power
great.
that comes
Hey,
my way.
Adam will send you
10.
questions. Don't worry.
Chris, Annie, Craig, Tony, and Woodsy,
More
I'm Ben.
Xander.
Thanks for joining us on our San Diego Roundtable Pizza Padres. Talk to you later.
Tune in Thursdays at 10 a.m. for our weekly Padres Roundtable featuring Ben and Woods, Annie.